how on earth they weren't picked up on by the security services, how they were able to get on the roof and mount a rifle in such vision and in such clear view of everyone and get to the stage where they can actually fire shots.
It's astounding, Christo. I'll be honest with you, there is something a little bit fishy about this situation.
There have been shots fired at a Trump rally in Pennsylvania. From what we can see, the shots were fired. There was crowd behind Donald Trump as the shots were fired. He instantly ducked down behind a barrier, and then when he emerged, he looked dishevelled and there was blood all over the side of his face. He appears to have injured his ear or around his ear area. He was then surrounded by his security, and at which point they made a circle around him and he put his fist in the air and fist bumped the air as if to say, I'm okay, I'm still here. And yeah, basically that's the breaking news that's happened here.
Okay, so we are joined at very, very short notice from a great supporter of the show. Sebastian Gorka joins us from his car. He is a former advisor at the White House. He was on the show last night. Sebastian, what has happened?
I've looked at the footage several times. I looked at the photographs that you've looked at. I am surmising from what I heard, and this is surmise, okay? The weapon did not sound very loud. Could have been a low caliber weapon like a 22 or a 25. The fact is that the president put his hand up and looked at it, and then he ducked down. He wasn't a central nervous hit where he lost control of his body, and then the fist pumping, as we saw, meant he was in control, he was compos mentis. But let's be clear. Let's be very clear about what we witnessed. There's one party in America that has normalized violence, from Black Lives Matter to Antifa, and it's not to the Republicans. If this is an assassination attempt against the leader of the opposition, I think we know who did it. It wasn't a Trump voter. It was somebody who says, yes, the Democrats have normalized violence, and this is the end result. So I would request everybody across the Atlantic to pray for President Trump, pray for his family, and pray for the future of the Republic, because this cannot happen in a normal, civilized nation.
Well, we have a major problem here. We don't know whether this was an assassination attempt, but we know that it comes just one day after a gross level of dishonesty over the status of President Biden, a man who is now fairly obviously incapable of being president. Now, we don't know whether there is a threat to the Republic. We don't know whether there is a coup d'etat. We don't know whether there is an assassination attempt. But what we do know is that the man who is now most likely to defeat somebody who is accused of being senile, who is accused of having Parkinson's disease, who is accused of being mentally incapable, has had shots fired at him. Seb, I don't like the direction of travel here. At the end of the day, we saw President Trump get into the vehicle. I don't believe that President Trump has been mortally or even seriously injured, but this direction of travel is dangerous, not just for America, but for the whole Western world, including the United Kingdom.
Look, I don't know what the producers are telling through your IFB in your ear, Andre, and I love you. You're a great guy, but this was an assassination attempt, right? Whatever the identity of the individual, this was a political rally, and the Secret Service had to go to the aid of President Trump after shots were fired at him. So this isn't an accident at the shooting range or Dick Cheney shooting one of his, bird hunting buddies. This was an assassination attempt, but it's Teddy Roosevelt stuff. The guy got up afterwards and did the victory signal with his fist. This is like
but
Teddy
why?
Roosevelt
But I want to ask you. I want to ask you.
There's no way this could be considered an accident.
I want to ask you. I want to ask you this, Seb. How has it come to this? You know, when you and I worked at Breitbart together with Steve Bannon, who, by the way, is in prison now for refusing to appear in front of a committee of Congress that was just fake and illegally created. You know, when we worked together, we never imagined that the way the left would come to this was illegality, hatred, throw people in prison. When are they going to engage with the issues?
Never. I'm sorry, Andre. They can't engage with the issues because it has become a radicalized party. Let's be clear. Look, I'm no fan of the likes of Bill Clinton, okay, or what he did with a 21-year-old intern in the White House. But he was normal. He wasn't insane. He reined in the extremists in the Democrat Party in the 1990s. Name me one leading Democrat politician who reins in the crazies in their party.
Seb, let me just throw this out to you and to my viewers and to my listeners. You ask yourself, if you were born in the 70s, the 80s or the 90s, you ask yourself this question: which country in the world rods the back of a president who is incapable, drugs him up and pretends that he is alive when he's virtually dead, who pretends that he is capable of speech when he is not capable, who then attempts to jail their political opponents, runs criminal investigations against their political opponents, and then there are shots fired and assassination attempts made against somebody running for the presidency. That's the Soviet Union. That's the Soviet Union. That's what happened in the country that stuck your father in prison and beat him to within 1 inch of his life. And now we're seeing it in the United States of America. Seb, I'm depressed because we, as the United Kingdom, bet the farm on America being the defender of freedom. And we're watching this. It's like Chenenko. It's like Brezhnev. It's absolutely disastrous. The whole thing is a disaster.
It's worse. It's worse. It's worse. What you're talking about, and God bless you for saying that, what my father, what my parents lived through was a totalitarian system where you had to comply. If you didn't comply, you were arrested. You were tortured. You were disappeared.
You should never feel.
Let me just finish my thought here, right? In those systems, there was only one party. You resisted, you were disappeared, okay? This is not a totalitarian system yet. So what we're seeing from one of the two parties is being done voluntarily. Nobody's putting a gun to their head. Nobody. When Maxine Waters, a leading Democrat, said when we were in the White House, and if you don't believe me, find the video and play it later. She said publicly, she said, if you see a member of the Trump cabinet in public, you surround them, you harass them. Kamala Harris, the current vice president, raised funds for BLM anarchists who had burnt down buildings. She was raising bail money for Antifa, for BLM. This is the insanity. These are people who are willingly normalizing radicalism, willingly normalizing violence. We have the leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, the most senior Democrat in the Senate, say publicly on the steps of the Supreme Court to two Supreme appointees of President Trump in the Supreme Court, two associate justices, Gorsuch, he said this, quote, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, you will reap the whirlwind. That's a threat. What are you doing, threatening an associate justice of the highest court in the land simply because he's a conservative appointee? Look, let me tell you one thing. My producer, the best producer in radio, just texted me, literally as I was preparing to come on air with you. He said, Jeff said, this is unbelievable. What did I text back to Jeff? No, this isn't unbelievable. This is the natural consequence of the normalization of violence by one political party. I'm sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to pussyfoot around it. The normalization of radicalism in violence is done by one party. It's not us. It's not the conservatives. It's not the Republicans. It's those who say, Antifa, that's cool. BLM, that's cool. You see a member of the cabinet in public, you harass them. them. How did we get here? I tell you how we got here, because the Democrats are fine with violence.
You know, it's very, very frightening because I don't have a massive invested interest in American politics, but it's irrelevant what you think. The guy is Trump is clearly a popular guy. And what they've tried to do to him, it doesn't matter how you wrap it up. It doesn't matter if you're the biggest Joe Biden supporter on the planet. As you've said, you cannot justify this kind of behaviour. He is a man at the end of the day, standing up for something that he believes in. He should not feel that he can't stand up because there'll be an assassination on him, on his life. That's absolutely disgusting. Like, that's not how we silence people.
That's not how politics
let me say one thing. Look, my thing is national security, okay? I was Deputy Assistant to the President for Strategy, and I grew up in the UK, okay? You should care. You should care about American politics down to the last atom of American politics. Why? For one very simple reason. When we were in the White House, the world was stable. We didn't invade anybody. When President Trump was president, the bad guys were afraid. Putin didn't invade any countries. We destroyed the caliphate of ISIS in 5 months after Obama said, oh, that's a threat you have to just live with. He literally said, it's a threat you have to live with. China was put back in its box. We almost brought Iran to its knees economically because of the sanctions, just on the cusp of the Persian people taking their nation back from the Islamophobic regime that's been running that country since 1979. Everyone, the little Kim in North Korea behaved himself. I was there in Singapore. We invited him to a peace summit, the likes of which hadn't been seen since 1953 and cessation of hostilities on the peninsula. We had the Abraham Accords with 5 Arab nations, normalizing relations with Israel. For 4 years, God gave us peace and stability because President Trump was a commander-in-chief. The dotard comes in. The senile husk of the man comes in, whose party hates America and normalizes violence. We get the second invasion of Ukraine. We get China militarized. We get the biggest death of Jews since the Holocaust. Every Brit, God bless you all, should care whether President Trump survives and becomes the 47th president, because the world will be a safer place. Absolutely. The mathematics is that simple.
Seb, look, I am a Labour voter, and it is concerning when Keir says, oh, he's absolutely fine, he's just a bit tired. Like, we're all subject to making mistakes. People make mistakes all the time. You know, you must do a lot of speeches. There's times you might trip over your words. But this has gone beyond being a bit tired. And for that being one of the first things that he's done as our new Prime Minister, it's concerning, isn't it? I know what I completely agree with what you're saying. It is a reflection. Unfortunately, it's a small world, isn't it now? And it is a reflection. What does this mean for Britain, do you think?
Well, hopefully your new foreign secretary will stop calling my former boss a Nazi and a racist. And what a piker. What a dick. I mean, really? We stabilized the world. We brought peace to the Middle East. We crushed the caliphate of ISIS. His son is Jewish. His son-in-law is Jewish. His daughter is Jewish. And we're the bigots. We're the racists. How about Lamy and the rest of those morons get their act together and pray for President Trump instead of being bigots themselves? That's what I would expect. A normalization of British relations with the U.S. and prayers for the man who brought stability, who strengthened NATO, who crushed ISIS, who made sure China was back in their box, North Korea was back in their box, Iran was on her knees. That's what we want. Look, the Brits have spoken. They bitch slap the Conservatives. Great. Nigel is on the rise. They've punished the Conservatives, but now it's time to understand. When America is strong, the world is a more stable place. So pray for President Trump.
Really interesting to wonder where this is going to go. Well, Will Geddes is now ready. He's an international security expert. You may have just heard me, Will, morning to you, discussing how on earth someone in such an obvious rooftop position with a clear line of sight to the former president, how on earth they weren't picked up on by the security services, how they were able to get on the roof and mount a rifle in such vision and in such clear view of everyone and get to the stage where they can actually fire shots.
It's astounding, Christo. I'll be honest with you. There is something a little bit fishy about this situation because ultimately, you know, when you're running the protection of a principal, one of the biggest concerns that you will always have is if you're taking them into open spaces, it could be out either singing, promoting, talking, you know, canvassing, whatever it might be, that wherever you have that event, you want to lock it down, secure it as much as possible. And the Secret Service that will be attached to President Trump should have got all of the highest positions, the overviews that there would be of the event space covered. And that's not only the spaces that they themselves can then observe everybody who may be on the ground, anybody who might be in the vicinity, anybody who might be approaching the vicinity, but also on other rooftops, in apartment windows, in office windows. So there's something a little bit suspicious about this, to put it mildly.
When you say suspicious, what do you quite mean by that?
Well, it really falls into one of two areas, Chris. There is either incompetence in terms of the security planning, or collaboration or collusion in terms of enabling there to be a vacuum, a void within the security that could be potentially filled. I hope it's not. I mean, I hope it's neither, to be absolutely honest with you. But at the moment, it's very difficult to draw any speculation as it to being, you know, either one or the other.
Is there any defence, perhaps, that the Secret Service can plead on this? Because apparently it was outside of the perimeter of their remit, if you like, that this shooter was on a roof quite far away, apparently from this rally. So is that anything that they can say that perhaps they couldn't have foreseen?
Not really. I think, again, I'm finding this really difficult for it to be a defensible position by the Secret Service. Unless there was such a lapse or there was some breakdown or failure, obviously, by someone within the Secret Service. Now, Krista, don't get me wrong. I know and have some friends who are in the Secret Service, and they are incredibly competent, and they're very well rehearsed and very well experienced, having had numerous attempts, assassination attempts of various different types against former presidents. So I know that they have their game plan very well set out. But the concern is, and I don't subscribe to conspiracy theories, Christo. You and I have known each other a number of years, and when have you ever heard me endorse a conspiracy theory? But this is just very, very odd that this open position, and with rifles, whether it be, you know, something which is built to shoot from with a parabellum from a great distance, you know, there are some serious questions to be asked that, you know, you try and put your principal into a pocket of security that they can. One of the biggest challenges, as we've seen in the world, where someone is right next to the stage of where they're talking.
I think.
Sorry, Chris.
No, that's all right. I think we were losing you for just a moment. Listen, well, really interesting to get your update on this. I think we're losing the connection a little bit there, so we'll leave it. But thank you so much for telling us what you think of that. And you know, again, I don't go for conspiracy theories much. I do a little bit, but not loads. But I can see where Will is coming from on that, because it is quite staggering. If you look at some of the footage, it's quite staggering, just the open space that this shooter was from. And again, members of the crowd, there's interviews with people from the crowd often saying, we were pointing, we were saying, look, there's this guy over there about to shoot at former President Trump. So it's quite staggering that this person was missed. So, you know, gross incompetence or something more sinister, well, those are going to be the kinds of questions that will be asked, and they're the kinds of questions that we will keep asking.
I'm going to start, Kinsey, by making the point that I made to Danielle. You know, we're not bothered in the United Kingdom about the domestic politics of the United States of America. Very few people in Britain know who the name of the governor of Alabama is. don't test me on that one. Actually, we're really concerned about having a quality leader of the free world and a quality election for the presidency of the United States of America. And I think where we sit, that's really not happening.
No, you're absolutely right. And just to give you an idea of talking about Joe Biden and the idea that for years the media in the United States lied to us about his condition, how bad it truly was. I just want to give you another example. Today, I sit here before you, and in my eyes, I just witnessed an assassination attempt. But CNN is calling this an incident with former President Donald Trump, which just, it fires me up beyond all comprehension. Because, Andre, I know that you know this, in the last few weeks, in the last few months, we've seen stars from Orange is the New Black, like actress Leah DeLaria, call on President Biden to assassinate Trump. She said, this is war. She said to Biden, you should use your presidential immunity to take out Trump. Back in 2018, we had Maxine Waters, a Democrat, telling supporters, harass Trump, harass his officials. So Democrats, and it does feel like people that lean to the left have encouraged this violent, nasty behavior.
And why it's not acceptable, is it, Kinsey? It's not acceptable. It doesn't matter how it's wrapped up. It's not acceptable for people to behave in that way. It's almost irrelevant what your personal views are. It's not a case of violence, is it?
I mean, it is right versus wrong. You know, where is our moral compass as a country? Where has it gone that we are still having to deal with things like this? I mean,
do you think it's because of his condition? Do you think? I almost wonder if because I think it makes him vulnerable, and I wonder if that is what makes other people kind of have to behave. So if he was doing a grand job, he wouldn't need to worry. No one would need to worry, would they?
Actually, Kinsey, I'm going to slightly disagree with both of you. My concern is that hatred has become cool. Now, listen, people think that I'm a very rude person on occasions, but I'm rude because I'm rude because I want to debate people. I don't personally dislike anybody. Hatred has become a part of politics. I think it's sickening.
I mean, it's become all of a sudden we feel the courage to say things to people, to their faces that we wouldn't have done 10 years ago, because it's something we do every single day on social media, whether we're leaving a sassy comment underneath a story we don't agree with.
I do agree with that, Kinsey. It's interesting. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because it is an element of change, as in the keyboard warriors. I've personally had it, and you know, I'm a big girl. It's absolutely fine, but it's not okay to just attack. But you know, and it's not about silencing people. We should all have a voice. Very much that is what talkTV is all about. That's what we stand for: is having a voice, having a good argument, and allowing difference of opinion. It's as if the opinion differs to whatever is considered the norm or considered okay, then we have to shut them down in whatever way possible.
You know, I mean, and this is one of the major extremes that we're seeing right here. Somebody that is, like Andre said, full of hate. And I do think it's a little bit of panicking over the state of our elections. If Joe Biden was doing amazing, I don't think that there would be this air of desperation and panic. And I mean, I'm absolutely horrified. I cannot believe that
Kinsey, Kinsey,
no, I know.
Kinsey, allow me to ask you what the line is. Now, before I ask you this question, I swear to you, I don't know where the line is. But I've always said that if you look at somebody like Nelson Mandela used violence because there was no ability to get a vote to deal with democracy. If Nelson Mandela had wanted to run for office in 1978, he'd have been thrown in prison. And in fact, he was thrown in prison. So I would say that a freedom fighter is someone who has no access to democracy. Then you look at somebody like Gerry Adams or Martin McGuinness. Those are people who I would say are terrorists because they could run for election but choose not to because they're not popular enough. But there is a bit in the middle. what Danielle said earlier, and I kind of railed against it a little bit, but I understand what she means. There would not be violence if people were not frustrated. Now, that's the bit in between. Now, I don't know where that line is, and I don't know what is... I know that Nelson Mandela, yes. I know Jerry Adams, no. I know Robert Mugabe, no. But I don't know where the line is in between. So I guess the question is, what can we do as a society to ensure that people feel more engaged? I know that's a bit of a pathetic question, but you see where I'm going.
No, I do. I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues we have today is that, like, there are 30-year-olds that still live with their mom and dad.
Yes.
We need
Absolutely.
We need people to feel like they have a purpose, and they need an outlet where they can...
Yeah. And grown-ups, it's very, do you know what, it's very cruel, and people don't realise. I mean, let me just, it's a tiny example, but it just kind of trying to make my point. One of my kids was on a work experience week, and I spoke to another mum, and she said, oh, I'm late every morning because I'm having to drop this kid off at his work experience. I said, pardon? She said, well, I'm having to drop him off at his work experience and then get to my work. I said, that's not work experience. Work experience is getting out your house and finding your way to work, because that is what you will have to do.
Yeah, but Danielle,
what's going on where children are bubble wrapped? Bubble wrapped.
No,
it's ridiculous.
That's nonsense. It's not bubble wrap. You have worked your entire life. Your husband doesn't even live with you because he's working that hard abroad. I mean, that can't be much fun.
No, it's not.
Right? The problem is, we are throwing children into the pit. We're not giving them an opportunity.
We're not giving them an opportunity to make a path for themselves.
You have a skill, a television presenting skill. Your husband is a football manager. That's amazing. Kinsey Schofield, I met her. Trust me, she's hot in real life.
I know she is.
I had a crack at her. She said no.
Yeah.
But the reality is, we have these opportunities. What we're seeing is a society that crushes these people.
People will feel frustrated. They will resort to violence if they feel they are not being heard.
Correct. Kinsey, that's depressing.
But how do we, I mean, get into government in turn? I mean, we've got to teach them how to make a way for themselves beyond burning down the local Verizon or T-Mobile store.
But Kinsey, with all due respect, Kinsey, we have just seen a government minister appointed who is without question the most crazed extremist that has ever been appointed in British government, Ed Miliband, who has now said that in addition to doubling the energy bill when he was a government minister, he now wants to double it again, and he wants to spend 5 pence on income tax to build the infrastructure for his crazed green energy stuff. I will tell you a fact, and I'm a rich guy because of this job. I will tell you that if your mortgage is £1,000 a month, if your energy bill is £1,000 a month, if your grocery bill is £500 a month, you will never ever be rich. You cannot do anything to be rich. You will always be poor. No matter how much you earn, you'll always be screwed. That is deliberate. Our country has deliberately thrown these people in the pit, Kinsey.
I feel like that's a question that I probably am not an expert in, because I'm under the impression that I'll be honest, Andre, I created something out of nothing. I don't have a college or a high school education, and I've become a journalist. I've worked
Kinsey, I'm going to stop you. Kinsey, the reason
that's why people like Trump so much.
No, I'm going to stop.
Because that's what he stands for, doesn't he? That's what he stands for.
No, this is the issue with Kinsey. Kinsey, this is the issue with you. You live in a country that is similar to Britain. You're basically British, but you live in a country that doesn't drag you down. You have come to... I mean, I met Kinsey at Royal Ascot. We'd never met before. We'd worked together on this show. She's somebody who had an opportunity to be successful. If she had been British, what's the first thing that would have happened? They'd have asked her for VAT.
I would have married somebody that was going to give me a life of luxury.
Yeah, well, I'd give you a life of luxury, Kinsey, trust me.
Don't marry him, Kinsey,
but
don't marry him.
It's just the teeth. I can just imagine it. But that was the worst, filthiest joke I've ever made. But okay, but on the serious note, you know, an ordinary kid trying to do what you've done, you know, immediately it would be VAT on this, taxes on that, all sorts of bills and whatever. I think that we are stopping ordinary kids from being successful. And it's easy for me. Do you know the reason why I keep saying that I'm rich and successful and powerful? The reason I keep saying that is because your children and my family are going to be fine, because you're a TV presenter, I'm a TV presenter, your husband's a football manager, and my family have got a big trust fund. But what about the ordinary people who don't have that? It's garbage.
Well, it might be garbage, but there are ways to deal with it. That you can't take to the streets. You can't set things on fire.
True. And Kinsey's right. You cannot have people with high-profile situations encouraging people to make bad decisions. Of course.
Exactly.
What about if we put some money into the schools? Never going to do that, are we? Can't be bothered doing that.
That's a great, and we need to change the way that education works, most likely for both of our countries, but certainly in the States. I mean, in the States, the college system is wild what they teach people. It's very left-leaning. And then you have all of these colleges that... Are you in the college system for a long time, like in England?
Is it, how old are you before you're allowed to kind of finish your education in America?
You finish high school around 18, and you're in college for around 4 years if you do a typical degree.
Right.
But
so so people are in education usually till in their early 20s?
No, I'm not being funny. Yes. Can I tell you this?
Go on.
A high school diploma in America is not the standard of British A-levels.
Oh, is it not?
So they have to do a further year at university.
Oh, no.
I'm not... Kinsey, I love you to pieces, but it's fair to say that a high school diploma in America and A-levels are not the same thing. So they do a 4-year degree as a result.
Right.
And then, but you know, you're seeing the kids at the elites here, and all of them protesting Gaza, protesting, I mean, totally just tearing up these beautiful universities. And you're
Kinsey, I'm going to stop you here. I want everybody who's listening to this to turn on to our YouTube channel, because we're just going to continually now rerun the video.
And it's very interesting to watch it. So we're basically watching...
of Donald Trump being shot at. I'm not allowed to say he's been shot. I have to say he's been shot at.
Shots were fired at the Trump rally.
Guys, can we slow this down? Can we just
see that what happens is, so there are shots fired, at which point Trump grabs at his own ear and then voluntarily ducks down behind the lectern.
Do me a favour. I'm gonna ask. Let's just keep repeating it, because I want to watch the people.
So you can see, look, the shots are fired. People can hear. Look. You can see that people can hear something. And then if you watch, look, he grabs his ear and then he chooses to duck down.
The shooter has now been named by the FBI as Thomas Matthew Crooks. He was a 20-year-old man. He was from Bethel Park in Pennsylvania, from Butler, the site, 43 miles from Butler, the site of the attempted assassination. The gunman was shot dead by Secret Service agents. The FBI did not name him until they got the results of his DNA back. Now, the latest lines coming out of the United States say they don't currently believe there are any additional existing threats, but this is still an active investigation. It's too early to conclusively say it was a lone wolf attack. CNN, a news organisation in the United States, are reporting that the shooter was a registered Republican who made a £15 donation to a Democratic-aligned group. Now, President Biden has said he condemns equivocally the shooting at the Trump rally in Pennsylvania, citing there is no place for this kind of violence, going on to say it is sick, it's sick. He's also been quoted as saying he is grateful that Donald Trump is safe and doing well following the campaign rally shooting. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has said, "I'm appalled by the shocking scenes. at President Trump's rally, and we send him and his family our best wishes. Political violence in any form has no place in our societies, and my thoughts are with all the victims of this attack. Two big voices in the United States have also spoken now. Bill Clinton says violence has no place in America, especially in our political process. Hillary and I are thankful that President Trump is safe and heartbroken for all those affected by the attack at today's rally in Pennsylvania, and grateful for the swift action of the US Secret Service. Barack Obama has said there is absolutely no place for political violence in our democracy. Although we don't yet know exactly what has happened, we should all be relieved that former President Trump wasn't seriously hurt, and use this moment to recommit ourselves to civility and respect in our politics. Michelle and I are wishing him a quick recovery. Joining us now is Roger Gawolb, who is a geopolitical expert. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, David.
Really, I mean, however you look at this, and whatever your political affiliations are, these are really shocking scenes coming out of the United States. Another attempted assassination of someone running for office in the United States. Lots of questions being asked about security there. Why was this gunman allowed to get so close, in such close proximity, onto a rooftop near Trump during a rally with families and children there? But also the broader question about gun control in the United States, the mental state of a 20-year-old assassin who tried to kill President Trump. Lots of questions to be asked, but also at the same time, Trump very much using this with that defiant punch gesture into the air to say he remains alive and well. He is continuing to run for office. We've heard statements about the convention which is taking place in the next few days as well, and tensions running very high indeed in the United States.
Yes, and I'm afraid that we've just, for example, been given a rather distorted picture by your last guest, Mr. Walker. It amazes me how some British journalists can actually spend time in the States and understand so little about America, Americans, and American politics. I mean, he failed to mention he said that it was Trump's words that caused January 6th, as if there's no doubt about that. And he told us that this was a crackpot and not a conspiracy. I don't know how he thinks he knows that, but it was so opinionated, it rather put me off. And of course, he forgot to mention completely the interview that Gary O'Donoghue, the BBC's own Washington correspondent, had with the young man who said, I gestured, I told the police, I told the Secret Service this man was climbing, and they ignored me. Now, how a journalist can leave a fact like that out of a report is exactly what's wrong with so much.
Well, also, to be fair to him, Roger, we're having a lot of reports of various people saying that they saw someone on a roof, that they informed the security services at the time. Those are unsubstantiated reports. Those are from those people themselves.
All he had to say was that Gary O'Donoghue of the BBC saw that and witnessed it and said it on his program. I think it's a very important fact, David.
So what are you saying here, Roger? Because
what I'm saying is that Trump has been saying, and Trump's people have been saying for a long time, and the fair, balanced view would be that Biden has weaponized the Department of Justice, which includes the FBI and the CIA and other institutions. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm saying I don't think it should be brushed aside in this man called a crackpot. I mean, Lee Harvey Oswald turns out pretty much not to be a crackpot. So we don't know what's going on. But, I don't know how somebody sitting over here can take that firm opinion.
Well, let's stick to the facts, though. What we do know, he was 20 years old, Thomas Matthew Crooks. He was from Bethel Park in Pennsylvania. He was shot dead by the Secret Service. Now, my real worry here is we're already seeing conspiracy theories abound on social media saying that this was the work of the authorities, the Secret Service were involved, they were trying to take Trump out, they don't like what Trump stands for in terms of the upcoming presidential election. Now, those are all rumours. They're all conspiracies, and they need to be put to bed, don't they?
They don't need to be put to bed. They need to be considered as part of the argument, because this is not a conspiracy theory out of the blue. This is what Donald Trump has been saying for years. This is what he wants to save America from. This is the swamp that he wants drained. Look how the Supreme Court has grown tired of these feeble attempts to prosecute him based on ridiculous things like traffic court judges trying him over questionable trials without evidence, as he's claimed. This is nothing new. So I think we must be open-minded to the fact that the elected American government today may not be completely honest. And as Mr. Walker said, American politics is very, very rough and tumble. It makes us look like a tea party here. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I certainly don't dismiss these out of hand as nonsense.
I mean, they're pretty wild allegations if you're saying that actually it was Biden's team somehow is involved in this.
Joe Biden, he also, Mr. Walker failed to mention, said only days ago, let's put Donald Trump in the bullseye. Now, even if all that did was inspire some nutter 40 miles away who thought he heard his spiritual leader call him to arms, even that, you know, was a terrible, terrible thing to say. You can't blame Biden for, Trump's injury and the assassination attempt, but there's too much here to ignore.
Well, I think also there are a lot of things to consider here. Amy and I were talking earlier about the mental health of this young man. We don't know anything about that. For example, we don't know motivations behind all of this. What it does say, though, Roger, is you mentioned the rough and tumble of politics. We've talked about it in this country. The fact is, it is becoming nastier, far nastier on the doorstep, which is, in my view, totally unacceptable. But the United States is on a different scale entirely.
Totally.
And that country has never been so divided between those people on the right and those people on the left.
Yeah, and you're taking, if I may say, a very British view of this. I mean, this is America, where, things are very, very rough and tumble, to use that phrase again. And this is nothing extraordinary. This is what happens sometimes. It's happened before. And it's very possible that Trump is right, that these agencies have been taken control of. And I don't mean that the head of the FBI is sitting there plotting to kill Donald Trump, but various people in these agencies could have agendas of their own. The fact that that so many people have said that the warnings that there was a man on a roof, I mean, Gary Donahue's interviewee said there were men on other roofs. Why wasn't there someone on this roof? You can't just dismiss it, especially in a country like America, where the attitude and the actions are quite different than they are in well-behaved...
But equally, Roger, we can't jump to conclusions, and there needs to be a full inquiry as to what happened. I think those are very valid questions. Why on earth were those buildings not searched? Why weren't there armed officers on a flat roof overlooking where Trump would have been? Now, those are all very valid questions which need to be looked at in the fullness of time. What does this say, though, as we approach the convention, and Trump has just messaged through Truth Social, but also the Republicans themselves have also messaged about their upcoming convention, saying we look forward to joining you in Milwaukee as we proceed with our convention to nominate Trump as our 47th president of the United States. He will continue to share his vision to make America great again. This is language which will appeal to those grassroots supporters of the Republicans, saying, yes, Donald Trump is back. He's going to make America great again. This is all ratcheting up yet another notch, isn't it?
Well, yes, except that, again, Mr. Walker doesn't understand. This isn't...
Let's leave Mr. Walker alone. Let's just concentrate on the evidence.
This is not appealing to crazed Trump supporters. The actions of Donald Trump yesterday, David, are appealing to all Americans. I mean, I heard a report of somebody who was at a dinner with a bunch of people who wouldn't vote for Trump in a million years, and they said how their respect for him went up. The way he behaved, that defiant gesture that, you're not going to stop me, I am going to save America, is going to garner respect in every quarter. People are tweeting this morning that that's it, Trump has won the election, because compared to somebody whose mental state is being questioned more and more, somebody who can behave like this after having just been shot and almost killed is the kind of hero that all 330 Americans want. They're not all going to vote for him necessarily, but I'm just saying I think it's a very positive thing. And I absolutely don't think, oh, this is something he's going to make political hay out of. He's going to make capital out of this. He didn't shoot himself. I'm sure there'll be somebody somewhere who claims he set this all up to look good. There'll be
and they already are, Roger.
What is the what's the news media this morning? What's the sense amongst the public and commentators and on what happened yesterday on this shocking incident?
First and foremost, thank God President Trump was not assassinated. And the sentiment right now is that if people weren't willing to walk on broken glass to vote for him in November, believe me, they are now. President Trump has been through the unimaginable over the last 8 years. I saw it firsthand working in his administration behind closed doors. And now we've all seen it play out in the public, even globally. And now you have this assassination attempt on his life. It's clearly the culmination of the hate and the violence that has been aimed at him since the moment he walked down the escalator at Trump Tower in 2015. And through it all, he has shown immense courage. He has not been brought down. And even after a horrific assassination attempt, this man continued to show tremendous courage, getting back up 30 seconds later after a bullet struck him to give out a rallying cry to the American people. If that's not a man of steel with the grit to lead the free world, then I don't know what is. And it's just
we can obviously only speculate that the reason for this shooting was a culmination of attacks on Donald Trump, and you're quite right, he's had a lot of hate directed at him as well. But you've had assassinations before in a less toxic environment. We can't be certain, can we, that the politicians and the media and the left have driven this?
Is that the argument? That
no, I'm asking you the question. You can't be certain, can you?
Well, the Democrats were so certain that when President Trump said protest peacefully and patriotically, they were so certain that he was blamed for January 6th. And here you have the President of the United States, Joe Biden, quite literally saying that there should be a bullseye on the former president. And you're telling me that in this case, suddenly words don't matter to the left?
No, I'm not telling you that. No, just to be clear, what I'm saying is I'm sorry, Catalina, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you did say what I'm telling you. I wasn't telling you. I was saying that I don't think we can be certain, can we? Which is a question. Now, you've mentioned the bullseye comment, which you're quite right to mention. I think I should read it out in full so everyone has the picture. The comment that was actually on Joe Biden's Twitter feed, it says, during a Monday call with leading Democratic donors, Biden said, "I have one job, and that's to beat Donald Trump. I'm absolutely certain I'm the best person to be able to do that." He's defending his continued participation. So we're done talking about the debate. It's time to put Trump in a bullseye. Now, as events have panned out, I get why you would make that suggestion that he's saying someone should literally target him like that. But I think most reasonable people would conclude he is not saying go and pick up a gun and shoot Donald Trump, would they?
So when other people in the Democratic Party have been comparing Trump to Hitler,
which is disgraceful.
Doesn't matter. And so
no, it does matter. It's disgraceful. But I'm asking you on that point. You've kind of literally suggested that Biden was suggesting someone picked up a gun and shot Donald Trump. I don't think that's the case, is it?
So saying that patriotically protesting peacefully, somebody should be made into a monster for January.
No, I'm not talking about that at all. I think calling him Hitler is outrageous, okay? I'm just trying to pin you down a little bit on this. It's not a...
Well, that rhetoric matters here, okay. Because there has a lot of violence and a lot of incitement of violence. And here, this is completely, this is absolutely ridiculous what politics has become. This is a third world country at this point. And unless we demand integrity back into the political process in America, our country is going to continue to go down a dark road. And I'll also say, because you're asking clearly, what happened here. let's also focus on Secret Service and the clear mistakes and the lack of accountability that's now being put on the Secret Service. There are a lot of interesting facts here. Why wasn't the area secured? Why did House Democrats try to push legislation to have former President Trump's security details stripped not too long ago? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered here, and I am very hopeful at the House Republicans and even Senate Republicans who will go down an investigation route here to see who should be held accountable for this, because it was absolutely absurd at the lack of professionalism and safety at this rally. I mean,
sure. We've been sorry, Kathleen. We've been talking about that very point, and you won't find too much disagreement in that. I think there's lots of questions that need to be answered. Recognising as well, though, that in the case of Donald Trump, the people immediately around him, I think they responded really quickly. But you're absolutely right. Why wasn't this area locked down, secure? You said something very interesting there. Americans demand integrity back into politics. Couldn't agree with you. I think it's true over here as well in the UK. There'll be many who agree with what you've just said, but that is easy to say. How could you achieve it?
First and foremost, it's by getting up and actually doing our civic duty and caring about what's going on in the country, you know, and I understand it's the same that's happening in the United Kingdom. You know, so many times people are complacent and voters can become complacent. And until it's personal to people, you know, President Trump, when he originally came in the office, you know, I'm a Midwestern girl. I grew up and I saw people in our community, their jobs were sold out to China. You know, people, we saw, my family is from Central America. We came here legally. People were seeing people come into our country illegally. Until it becomes personal to you, people are going to stand up and care. And so the only way that, you know, we bring back integrity to the system is if we, the people, choose to bring back that integrity. That's what our founders wanted in a representative democracy. They said that countless times when they framed our Constitution, and they built that based on what they saw in the United Kingdom, in England at the time. They built those based on something, and they wanted something different. And in order for us to, again, put back integrity, it really comes down to the American people and who they elect.
Is it so much about who they elect, or actually that the politicians, whoever are elected, deliver on the promises?
Well, again, in a representative democracy, we, the people, have the say. So if our elected officials are not doing their job, we have the ability to fire them. In Congress, it's every 2 years, and in the president,
agreed.
So it's up to us to care. You know, what I always see that's interesting is that United Kingdom notoriously has actually higher voter turnout. I know this last election, maybe not, but compared to the United States, you have voters that aren't even involved into the process. And here you have something in this case that is so monumental in our politics, like the assassination attempt on former President Trump. The last time this happened was to Ronald Reagan in 1981. So people, I believe, have to start caring and have to start seeing what is going on in the country and in the institutions, and bring back integrity and also just bring back strength and leadership. We don't have servant leadership in our country at all levels. And ultimately, I believe that President Trump is a servant leader, having worked for the man, having seen what life was like after 4 years of his administration. Whatever you think about him as a human being or personally, as a president, he was an incredible president. And what he did was deliver for the American people.
Okay.
Say was a great person as well, but ultimately we need to go back to strengthen leadership and integrity.
Interesting. Right at the beginning, you said something that I intuitively agreed with, but I spoke to someone earlier in this show, a chap called Jason Reifler. He's a former Washington pollster, and he's a professor of political science at University of Exeter. His is just one view, okay, and it may be an informed view, but or an academic view. And I asked him the same question. I said, look, you know, will the sound of the gunfire that was aimed at Donald Trump and nearly killed him, will that still be heard in November? Alluding to your same point, that this will, if you like, seal the deal for him in some ways in winning the election. he was pretty adamant it wouldn't. Now, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that's not a political judgment. He even thinks that history has shown when, like Jerry Ford, he was attempted assassination, he survived. Carter, they didn't go on to win. What makes you so certain that it will have a positive impact on the polling for Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, we have to look at the temperament leading up to all of this. So even prior to this horrific incident, you look at history will actually show you that after a debate performance like Joe Biden, you know, when Carter was up for re-election back in 1980, the Democratic Party was in complete disarray. And so they knew that he could not be reelected. Well, what ended up happening was that they couldn't find a better candidate. And ultimately that led to the historic landslide victory of Ronald Reagan. So that's one instance. So we look at the debate performance. People were already, were clearly, hiding in the shadows if they didn't think that Joe Biden...
Well, America was conned. I mean, America has been conned for months over the state of Joe Biden. I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
Well, and so they saw it in real time. And so the people who somehow were living under a rock and didn't see the cognitive decline there 4 years ago are now calling for his resignation. So that's one factor. You look at also the trial that happened over Trump not too long ago. You could look at the Supreme Court case. Those are all very isolated instances that history would probably tell you that, especially as it pertains to the debate performance and Biden versus Trump in that arena, would probably tell you that this was already heading into a Trump victory. Also with just the policy decisions that Joe Biden has made that have not been great for the American people. And now you have this, where I do believe that this is going to make so much national, global attention that you will have people who were not planning to vote, maybe even independents or moderates who were going to stay home because they didn't like either candidate, are now going to come out in droves.
And Ben, what was your reaction to this horrendous news from America? Thank goodness he's all right.
Yeah, thank goodness he tilted his head at that split second when the when the thing was fired. And that bullet was on target.
Yes.
You know, if it clips your ear, it's on target. And I don't know the precise distance of the shooter, but if you're 150...
It's about 200 metres.
Yeah, 200 metres. That's actually, you know, from a sporting perspective, that's a pretty good shot, 200 metres. I know you say it's close, and some high-powered rifles can go a lot further, of course. But if he's using a sporting rifle, one to shoot...
And we don't know, of course.
Yeah, we don't know. But if he's using one to shoot a deer or something, that's a damn good distance.
This 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks is the person who the Secret Service have taken down, who's clearly the gunman. I mean, very, very worrying for what's happening in America.
Very worrying. I mean, you know, I don't want to just jump on the bandwagon of politics is much more divisive now than it's ever been, and people are prepared to go to lengths that they never were prepared to go before.
And also, we don't know what was going through this person's head.
Yeah, we don't know. But you know, this kind of thing has happened in the past. Obviously, famously, JFK was shot.
By Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, and Ronald Reagan was shot.
Yep.
And we've had other assassination, you know, Abraham Lincoln was shot. So politics has always been divisive in that sense. But it's shocking, it's terrible, it shouldn't happen. You know, and I hope that Trump will come back. Well, I think he's going to come back stronger, actually, as a result of this, from a political perspective. People are going to have a lot of sympathy, he'll get his vote out.
Jonathan Less, what do you make of this?
Well, obviously, political violence is always wrong, must always be condemned in the most forceful manner. I do think that we have to take stock of the fact that when Nancy Pelosi was subject to an assassination attempt and her husband was hospitalised with very serious injuries, Trump mocked it and laughed at it. So I think that when the Republicans are now accusing Democrats of sort of stoking the flames of this, they need to look into their own, you know, their own building as well to see what.
27 seconds. It's taken you 27 seconds to blame Donald Trump for his own assassination attempt.
I haven't blamed
Yes, you have.
No, I haven't
yeah,
blamed
you have.
Donald
You just
Trump.
did.
I haven't blamed
You just did. It took you 27 seconds.
I haven't blamed him for anything.
You have. You said he needs to take a look at his own...
I said the Republicans...
Take a look at his own... Yeah, including Donald Trump. That's what you did.
Republicans need to look at the way that they have treated...
So it's Donald Trump's fault that someone shot him? Is that what you're saying?
If you let me talk, I'll tell you exactly what my position is. I started off by saying that political violence is always wrong. And clearly Donald Trump has not incited his own assassination attempt. That would be ludicrous. Clearly that's not happened. Actually, if you look at the person who did this, it seems that he was a registered Republican, so you know it's not some sort of far left maniac as far as we can ascertain. But I think that all people in the United States obviously need to look at their language, and I think it's entirely legitimate to point out that the Republicans, when a leading Democrat was subject to an assassination attempt, the Republicans did not use the language that the Democrats have used today, which is to condemn it unequivocally and unreservedly. They mocked it, they laughed at it. And I think that's a legitimate point. I'm not saying the Republicans have brought this on themselves. I'm saying that it's the Republicans... Sure. I'm saying exactly what I'm saying, Peter, is that the Republicans need to also look at the way that they have used language themselves and treated their opponents in a broader context of political violence. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is to blame for this, and obviously I'm very glad that he's okay.
Do you not think that any form of language, with the exception of an incitement to violence, should be allowed in political discourse? You know, we often use military metaphors in this country. It's part of our lexicon, isn't it? And I think it is in the US to some extent. And to be fearful of having robust debate because you might incite some lunatic 20-year-old to get a rifle and have a pop at you, I think is to dumb down debate. We should be able to get on a podium and basically say whatever the hell we want, as long as we're not actually inciting violence.
I agree with you. I agree with you. That's entirely, and that's why actually.
But it's not about minding language, then. I mean,
no. The language the language I'm talking about is the language of mocking Pelosi's husband and Pelosi when she was basically the victim of an assassination attempt. If she'd been in the house when that intruder came in, then she would have obviously been targeted instead of her husband.
On the 7th of Jan 2020, is that what you mean, Capitol Hill, the riot?
No, I'm talking about
it was a separate...
Capitol Hill, I mean, look, Capitol Hill is an entirely separate issue. That's when Trump was obviously inciting violence. Look, Peter, the fact that Trump has been the victim of political violence doesn't exonerate him from all of the things that he has said before, which have been inciting violence or dismissing violence. I think you can sort of walk and chew gum at the same time. It doesn't wipe the slate clean. I think we need to be really careful going forward that we appreciate the gravity of what has just happened and give thanks for what has been avoided, while at the same time not sort of resiling from our view that Donald Trump is a very dangerous man. He poses a danger to global security in
no
all...
more so than any other president before him. I don't
think that's... Ben, what do you think?
Well, I think that the US has a habit of getting involved in, if you're talking about global security, has a habit of interfering in foreign countries and geopolitical affairs to the detriment generally of itself and the West. You know, we're not without guilt. You know, we can point at any number of our interventions over the last 25 years and say, well, actually, none of them have been successful.
OK. Jenny has been in touch and says, so the report release said the shooter, gunman, whatever you want to call him, was taken out from an elevated position. So were marksmen already on the elevated position, or did they climb there in the seconds between the shooting and them shooting the man? If they could see him to take him down, why could they not see him when the witnesses were shouting he was on the roof? Well, all these questions have to be answered. Absolutely astonishing clip. I don't know if you guys have seen it on the BBC. Very, very good interview by Gary O'Donoghue asking this man who was nearby,
having a party,
having a party, saw the gunman on the roof. Darren says, I bet the CIA and FBI are frantically cleaning up and sanitising the shooter's background, digital devices and homes, so no connections to anybody remain. Just saying. Well, Darren, we don't know that. And Paul has been in touch to say this attempted assassin is the work of globalists. No, he's not. No, he's not. Sorry, I'm not reading that. He's not reading that out. That's conspiracy nonsense. Let's talk about the issue here. We don't know a lot of things. We don't know who this guy was, whether he was acting alone or with other people. So please don't text me to say you know what was happening, because we don't know. I don't know. You don't know. We're finding out what happened. We don't know whether he was, well, we know he was a registered Republican, but we don't know whether he hated Donald Trump for any reason. We don't know whether he was mentally ill. We don't know whether he's done this before. There are lots of things we don't know. So let's just be careful about this. Matt in North Wales says, Peter, you're one of the most sensible voices out there. Your reaction to your contributor was embarrassing. In no way was he blaming Donald Trump for the attack. His point is entirely legitimate. Your station has run people all morning blaming Democratic rhetoric for what happened, so pointing out the hypocrisy is important. You're usually a grown-up voice. Please remain doing so. Okay, Matt, that was Matt in North Wales.